All right, well, we're gonna make a video at this hour in the morning because far too early, far too late at night because I won't be able to sleep until I do. Um, we are discussing what I believe to be the dumbest idea I've ever encountered. This guy is a Duke professor. Okay, cool. Let's find out what he is a professor in. Bum, bum, bum. Sure, what's he a professor in? Okay, here's his LinkedIn. What is he actually teaching? Let's find out. God, I fucking hate advertising. It's actually the worst. I teach entrepreneur. Go away. I don't get to do that. Disgusting. Alright. He does entrepreneurship with a focus on social marketing and blah 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 blah. Okay, cool. So like this guy's literally got some kind of photo with somebody surrounded by money. He's selling lies. That's what he does. We're gonna witness him go about selling lies. Let's talk about this.
Failed
I
a
don't have
portion of their
volume. Let's try that again.
32 of my 35 students between two classes failed a portion of their midterm because they all used AI to generate their entire response. And apparently they didn't proofread it. Let me show y'all how I picked up on
Okay.
it. So this discussion post was a portion of my students' midterm, and if you look, it looks normal, right? But if you copy and paste this and look closely, in white ink, I hid, placed the word Madagascar somewhere in.
This is the setup. So this guy's standing here acting like he's watching this like in-cut screenshot, I guess. Maybe he is. I don't know, bit of a weird setup, whatever. Who cares about how he's creating his content? Like he's responding to this video and we're about to see like actually the worst response I can possibly imagine.
Response in a way that makes no sense.
All right, so judging by the comment section of that post, it is really easy to get distracted by the wrong part of the story. Technically,
So he's lying. That opening line, that's a lie. It's really easy to get distracted by the wrong part of this story. It's like, hey, the the content was made by somebody else. He doesn't get to decide what the right or wrong part of the story is. Like the story is being told by somebody else, and people are being distracted by the bit that actually what that story was about. This guy's just going to try and lie to you, right? But I didn't even realize it's definitely an interesting experiment by blah blah blah, and also an important moment to remember. The issue here isn't AI bad. The issue is students learning to take responsibility for their work, and so we'll watch his argument about this.
this professor didn't catch his students using AI unless he was standing over their shoulders while they did it. Theoretically, they could have, I don't know, asked friends to write their essays for them, and their friends just randomly decided to discuss Madagascar. And yes,
That's like a stupid argument, right? You could make the same argument that like, oh well, if you were standing over their shoulder, what if they somehow had figured out how to bounce photons off of, different objects in a way that made it look to the observer that they were actually using their AI rather than doing it in some other way, right? You could use that kind of reasoning till the cows come home, right? You weight your belief to the evidence at hand. The evidence at hand overwhelmingly suggests that because the text is white and not visible to like humans unless they highlight it, and the likelihood that a human would highlight it and then actually choose to include it by virtue of the fact that it's obviously intentionally there to sort of work with how AI reads text, that any human would write anything like it. Like you can see how like outrageous this line of reasoning is. This guy's a professor. He's in charge of educating people. This is his job is to educate people. This is the quality of like professorship that exists at Duke University, right, so far. This guy has no capacity to even conceptualize like basic argument structure.
I realize that is an absurd argument.
It is
but
an absurd
humor me
argument.
because
So no, we shouldn't humor him, but we're going to for a second because then I'm going to actually like rip his argument to shreds.
it actually Score is what matters here. The issue isn't students using AI. I mean, that's basically just old person finger wagging. Kids today using AI, it's going to ruin the world.
So, straw manning. Insane straw manning. Right? Like again, first year uni students in philosophy learn not to straw man. This guy's a professor. Instant straw manning. That's what he's doing. Instant straw manning.
You can go back thousands of years and find stories of Socrates complaining about how all his students were using this fancy new technology called written language to write stuff down, and how reading was going to destroy humanity since nobody was going to be able to memorize things anymore.
False equivocation. Socrates thinking that might happen is completely different to us having research that actually like indicates what will happen to our brains the more we use AI, depending on the circumstances that it's used in and how it is or isn't like guardrailed against, right? So again, false equivocation. People who are concerned about the impact of AI on cognitive development are not the same as Socrates just being like, if people write things down, they'll lose the ability to memorize. It's like, well, like that's the whole thing is you can check. And turns out like maybe a little bit, but like not all the way or you know, like there's all sorts of things that you have to like consider when you're using some like straw man argument and then making a false equivocation between like one guy in the past saying writing is bad, it means we'll forget how to memorize it, versus like the wealth of research that's already gone into AI and its impact upon cognitive development and learning, right? And we'll get into that in a moment. This guy's just doing this to sell us on AI.
Worked out. The real issue here is not a bunch of students use AI. The real issue here is that a bunch of students put their names on essays without bothering to read what they said. That matters way.
I've had to re-record this video because I stupidly like doxed myself in the middle of it. So the first time I sort of let that one slide because I thought I would address it later, but actually I don't want to let that slide. I want to immediately address it. They didn't say anything. That's like the key difference. This guy is lying to you. They did not generate any of what was said. They put their name on something that somebody else wrote. And even if you use his stupid argument, his absurd argument, as he described it earlier, of what if their friends did it, it's the same thing. If their friends wrote the essay, it means that they didn't write it. But then he's just said, oh, the problem is that they put their name on the thing that they wrote.
Way beyond this one class. At some point, we all
well, yeah, it matters way beyond this one class, but that's not the foundational issue here.
To put our names on the things we put into the world. An email, a report, a video you post on social media, and the most basic professional skill there is, right, the bare minimum, is knowing what you are telling people before telling them.
So, this guy is concerned with professional skills. So he's not concerned with, like, the deeper foundational issue here. He has such a limited lens, just lacks so much education when it comes to like knowledge of like psychology and the research that's coming out with regards to cognitive development and its impact upon cognition across all age brackets and AI. Like he is not aware of any of this, it would seem, from this video. And he's a professor, so he has a degree of weight, he has a degree of authority behind what he's saying. And on top of that, in this video, it's not that he's just speaking from a place of ignorance, he is strawmanning. He is making things up about people who have this opposition to AI because he has not educated himself enough on it to understand it, and then he's made up a story for why other people have a different worldview to him. Right? He hasn't investigated. He doesn't have curiosity to go, well, why is it that like people from certain spaces are very resistant to AI? And he's got no ability to conceptualize of this. This guy's a professor. Again, it's like this is meant to be one of the best educators with regards to like the field that he's educating in. And this is his approach to learning. This is his approach to cognition, is that you see it in his own approach to addressing this video. He doesn't do any background research. He makes false equivocations between people who know far more than him on this. Like way more than him. It's so clear that because even if he did know all of it, he would address it, but he's not.
Which is what these students provably miss. This isn't an AI bad issue, it is an ownership issue. As a teacher, I don't care if AI wrote every word. I care that every word you hand me is a word you stand behind.
All right. And that gets to the core. Like, this guy should lose his job over a statement like that. And I mean that in all genuine seriousness, right? There's an emotional weight behind everything I'm saying, obviously, because I care very deeply about it. But there's a reason that I care very deeply. When it comes to being a teacher, you should care that AI wrote every single word that a student is submitting you. Because your job as a teacher, when it comes to taking in work that students are giving you, is not to assess how good the work is. It's to assess how well a student is or is not learning the thing you're trying to teach them. And we do that by proxy through tests and homework, blah, blah, blah. But it's by proxy. It's not about how well the work is done. Because I can just pay somebody else to do the work for me. And you know what? We consider that within our modern education system? We consider that cheating, right? Because you are fabricating this idea that you've learned. And when we're talking about AI and text generation, when it comes to the education sector and in terms of it being, let's say, unregulated, we'll get into guardrailed stuff in a moment, but when we're talking unguardrailed AI, its ability to manufacture content on behalf of a student, whether it's a free version or paid, makes no difference. You are outsourcing the actual task at hand to something else. And it's like, this is so bad that unis are like taking back degrees from students for doing this. This guy has instead gone, well, no, it's just about the professionalism of actually standing behind the stuff that you're putting your name down to. You know what this guy probably does then? I'm thinking about how bold of an accusation I make here. I mean, not an accusation. Let's say it's a proposition. If this is the attitude of a professor at a university, that they think, sorry, that they do not care if every word like in something handed to them by a student is fabricated by a machine and does not come from the student at all. They just care if the student has read it to know if they stand behind the words or not. What that tells you is almost certainly that any content this person is producing, there is no consideration by this professor in the content they produce for whether or not that content is produced by them and their own original thoughts or by a computer thinking on their behalf. And when it comes to AI and expertise, there is one thing I can say with like certainty without getting too much into the weeds on like the current research when it comes to AI and cognition, which is that unless you are an expert in a field, your ability to critically assess AI's output basically doesn't exist. And if this is this person's approach, and we understand how AI impacts, like it creates cognitive de-skilling, creates cognitive misskilling, for people learning how to learn, causes cognitive unskilling, I think is the new term from like the most recent paper a month ago looking at like AI in the education sector with med students. What I'm going to actually propose here is that this man is just willingly letting his brain be destroyed because he has no concept or understanding of how AI works and impacts the brain, and that the likelihood that he is then outsourcing his own like cognitive muscle, for lack of a better term, I hate that analogy, but let's say that, to a machine in order to like be more effective, and ultimately like actually just losing that, like what probability are we taking? Like, can I make a bet on that this guy is making some kind of professional content from AI? Because like I would wager some amount of money. Like I'd take that risk, I'd take that gamble. Again, this guy's like, it's not like he's just got a degree. He's in charge of teaching people. Like he's paid by a university to do this job. Like universities meant something in the past. This guy's slamming Socrates without having any idea of the difference between the critique that Socrates made of writing and like how that even is attached to like cognitive development in the first place. And then like the actual research that's coming out with regards to AI and cognitive development, right? Like let's not even talk about all the other ways in which AI is like atrociously bad, right? Because let's presume there is a future where there is no environmental impact, no energy demand impact, and no like property theft, etc. impact, or better yet, no social impact on the fact that like AI making art instead of like us having artists be paid to do that, or job automation, or let's remove all those problems from AI. Just for a moment, let's imagine a future where none of that exists. The most fundamental issue facing humanity with regards to AI is the fact that there is a distinct difference between a specific tool being outsourced versus a general tool being outsourced. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there's a point in time in your education where you are handed a calculator. Why and when is really important. You don't get a calculator, ideally, before you understand basic maths, right? You get taught addition and subtraction, and you do that by hand, and you learn the methodology to do division and multiplication before you get the thing that automates the tool for you. Why? Why is it important to have practiced that a whole bunch as well before you get the thing that automates the tool for you, not just do it once and then go on? Because you need that ingrained in your idea, like in how you think about things, to then be able to do algebra later. Like that's important. You need to be able to do that because your ability to not have to use like the general quadratic formula like is tied to your familiarity with numbers. And that comes from the practice element of doing addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, right? Rather than, just type the button in and I get this and I learn the method through which I type the button. And that's a very key thing is like, okay, when it comes to calculators, what are calculators? In terms of how we learn to use them, they're a method that we learn instead of the actual fundamental, like complex theory behind why addition or subtraction, division, multiplication, etc. work, right? So there's this method behind what a calculator does. Now you could teach students to just copy 1 + 1 equals or blah 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 blah, but you can't then expect, and they won't be able to understand, at least very easily, maybe with enough time, but nowhere near as quickly as like being forced to, hey, here's a problem, and like we're going to give you the tool set to approach it and the tool set to tackle it, and then we'll make you go do it by yourself for a bunch, and you'll make mistakes as you do, because that's like a separate skill to using a calculator. Right? And it's like, why is that skill important? Because using a calculator is following like instructions, basically. Like whatever's on the thing in front of you for the problem you're trying to solve, it's like you follow that. Whereas like doing addition or subtraction or like that is fundamentally different. It's like you have to have a grasp of what numbers are in the first place. You have to understand like how they work and how they interact. There's like properties behind that you have to wrap your head around. But like a calculator is a tool for a very specific task. Like AI fundamentally is a general tool, and the general tool that it is replacing, and this is me sort of conceptually speculating because like it's hard to sort of like definitively prove this. It's my position based on like all the evidence that I've seen thus far in terms of the outrageous amount of continuing research is AI is a general tool, and the general tool it is replacing is our cognitive ability to have intelligence, basically. And when I say intelligence, I mean the general intelligence, the fluid intelligence that sort of we care about when it comes to our ability to know things over time, right? What does that mean? Well, crystallized intelligence historically is basically just like what you know. Well, you can know a lot of things, but the harder thing is like how do you go about learning more complicated things and understanding the relationships of those things and deal with like very complex systems and potentially very complex systems interacting with other very complex systems and not discrete like black and white systems but like scalar systems in terms of like risk and all sorts of really messy things, right? It's like here's my question. Who here thinks that they could possibly have done a better job without the hindsight that we have of managing a global pandemic, given the one that we just faced? It's like that's hard to do when you are constantly getting new updates to what the likelihood is. Because that's what science is. Science is likelihood. It's approximation. It's like, okay, and then as a situation is developing and we have mathematical models that predict like the scale at which things will occur, and then we have to like consider the risk of like whether or not we resource like certain masks to a thing based on like other data that maybe suggests that hey, point of infection occurs at this point onwards with regards to symptoms, and then like 3 months later we get new data that says actually no, we think the point of infection occurs here, and so it's like okay, well should you have always been outsourcing masks that like would like critically require? And it's like your ability to do that is not something you learn in high school. Your ability to do that is not something you learn in undergrad. And this guy is saying, no, you don't need to learn that at all. AI will do that learning for you. And it's like, no, it won't. It will not do that learning for you because you aren't learning it then. So then the real question is, and this is like a different kind of question depending on like where you are at in your education. Because fundamentally, like if you're an 8-year-old, you have far less of a choice in this, painfully. But if you're an undergrad student, um, like you're gonna have to decide to do one of the hardest things in the world right now, which is like if you choose to do what every other undergrad student around you is doing, basically every other undergrad student around you is doing, and choose to like interact with AI, the one thing you can guarantee is in 10 years you will be far less cognitively developed through the pattern of using AI, and that habit that you've developed than you could have been. So you won't be that person who can like handle the world falling apart. It's like this guy, if he can make a 2 minute video about this and like straw man and draw false equivocations and have the confidence to put this on the internet as somebody who is a professor at a university, he's got the confidence to publish this on the internet. Like we're talking about putting our names to things, and it's like this guy is so clearly not an expert in any of the stuff that he's talking about, and he's got that confidence. It's like, where do you think that false confidence comes from? It's like we have research on this as well. We have research that shows us that people who use unguardrailed AI to learn how to solve problems and then go and do an exam, with a bunch of people who are using guardrailed AI and people who weren't using AI at all, and answer the questions, and they obviously do terribly because when they were using the unguardrailed AI to do their learning and to do their homework, they just got the answer from it, and they go to the exam and this false confidence that they have, they think they do as well as everybody else, right? They believe that when they did the exam, even though even though they were just using AI to get the answer prior, they believe when they go in and they do the exam that they did just as well as everybody else, and they did atrociously. It's like that's what AI is doing to you, not just to high schoolers or undergrads. It's like it's doing it to this university professor. Like this guy's got a belief so strongly that he can comment and defend AI with regards to what the original video is about and completely miss the point because he's got no actual depth of knowledge in the actual fields that matter here, right? He's got no understanding of cognitive development. He's got no understanding of the research of AI and its impact on cognitive development. I mean, he's got no clue that study that I mentioned was like published a month ago on med students. It's like, hey, we've got this third category, proposed third category, like that's how evidence works in research papers, of like a third kind of like skill issue that, for lack of a better term, that AI causes. Like, has he even heard of the term cognitive de-skilling? Like, I would hope so, but like it's not clear to me that he has because he's defending AI as if it's the same as like using computers. And even on that, let's talk just so briefly about using computers. There's research already that's showing that unguarded access to computers at certain ages does negatively impact cognitive development. So, yeah, we should be caring about that too. 3 to 5 year olds have purportedly less white matter if they're given screen time compared to those who aren't in their brains. It was white. Oh man, I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure it was white matter. It's one of the two matters. I'm very tired. Um, you know, like same with just like technology introduction into schools generally. It's like okay, so we introduce technology into school and we start being concerned with like okay, so when students aren't paying attention, they aren't learning. That's obvious, right? Students aren't paying attention, they aren't learning. That's like the most obvious thing because you can't learn something that you're not paying attention to. Okay, let's use technology to enhance students' attention spans. And like that sounds like a great idea. It sounds like a really good idea. And this experiment that we've tried with effectively Gen Z, it didn't work. It did not work. Gen Z has cognitively progressed with respect to millennials. It's the first generation that has done that, right? Each subsequent generation normally has increased in intelligence, generally speaking, because we spend longer in education and the education system has improved as a whole with each subsequent generation. Like, okay, so Gen Z goes backwards when we introduce technology. Like, why? Because attention is not the thing that drives and dictates learning. It is a requirement of learning, but quality of learning is tied directly to friction and the way in which they went about increasing attention with how they use technology within classrooms, at least seemingly from my understanding, was like um, maybe drawing conclusions that aren't actually shown in the evidence. My familiarity with it isn't very high. I think that's important to understand. Like when I talk with things, I'll try and make it clear, but I'm not super confident on certain things. But at least to me, it's my understanding is that's basically tied to the fact that like the methodology through which we went about keeping children's attention through technology, in part, was actually reducing the friction to engaging with content. I've certainly seen, I think, I'd have to double check this, but like speculatively, I have this recollection that I saw something as well in terms of like just the differentiation between like face-to-face learning versus like screen-to-face learning and like that also having an impact, whether or not that's true or how well established that's been. Like this is beyond the depth of expertise that I have, but like that's really important, and that's not AI. That's even before we get to AI. So when we're talking about how we let anybody learn using a certain tool, like it's so important to understand what it is that that tool is doing as part of the learning process, not in terms of the function of what we're trying to test them on. So a written essay, it's like depending on when the like who's doing the writing, the age at which they're doing the writing. Like obviously it's going to be subject specific, but actually there's a bigger thing that's being learned regardless of the subject, which is age dependent, which is when I'm writing things for the first time in kindy, it's I'm learning to write. Like I'm developing dexterity with my fingers and familiarity with words, etc. When I'm writing the beginning of like narratives or stuff like that, I'm learning structure. I'm learning how to string together broader ideas and or doing, what is it, an exposition or something like that, like in later primary school. It's like that's different to a history essay in high school, where foolishly, you know, I, like many others, initially learnt to write those by copy pasting things from Wikipedia, or slightly rewording them, right, to verbatim basically look at an idea, be like, well, that sounds right, but I've got to make sure that it's not me just copying what they're saying, and so I reword it, right? Rather than getting eventually to the core idea, which hopefully happens hopefully happens in high school then, but at the very least starts happening hopefully at some point, which is you stop copying people. You actually read their ideas, and you are well put together enough in your brain that you are able to synthesize and create from many different sources new ideas or your own way of wording those ideas, right? And write those down. And then we add a layer on top of that, which is the research layer, or which is like the depth of research that's required before you can formulate and synthesize ideas from all those sources, right? And the formalization process of how precise you have to be with language when you are talking about things and defining things for readers, right? It's like this is lost on this man. This man's like, I don't need anybody to do that. Just prompt the AI really well. It's like, okay, so you want people to just learn how to ask AI to do the job for them. What's the job? It's like the job is different at different ages, and this guy cannot comprehend that at all. My soul screams for humanity that a person like this is in charge of education of some kind. What a despicable human being.
Because honestly, the genie is out of the lamp, right? We live in a world where computers can write words for us now. The second your name goes on it, well, those become your words.
No, they don't, and that's never been true, and he is lying. And these are the words of a man who would steal. They do not become your words. You are passing off writing that is not your own. You are passing off ideas that are not your own. That is something that you have to learn not to do in like primary school and high school, and it's hard not to. Do you know why I know it's hard not to? Because I used to do it. Because obviously when I was in high school, at some point I had access to a computer, and I realized it's easier to go to Wikipedia and reword something that somebody else has already put the effort into writing than it is to come up with that idea myself, right? Like that was easier, right? And it takes time, and it takes teachers like pressuring me to not do that and calling me out on that. It's like I never got caught either. I was really good at it. Thankfully, I figured out that that's a stupid thing to do myself. But it's like if you fall into this trap of being very good at pretending that stuff that isn't your own isn't your own, you won't do what I do. You'll do what this guy does. You'll be stupid and you won't even realize you're stupid. Like, and I mean that. This guy can't tell that he's saying stupid things, or worse, he's lying on purpose. And I desperately hope it's the first one, that he is just so blindly ignorant to how out of his depth he is.
So you better mean every single one of them, including Madagascar.
This guy probably means every single one of his words. But I'm going to grant him the benefit of the doubt and presume that it really genuinely is from a position of ignorance. But there is a chance, and I'm, like this is not because of this specific person, this is just stuff that we know that happens, that somebody has paid him to do this. Not for this video, generally, to go out there and try and convince people to use AI more. And it's like, why? 'Cause I think last time I checked some other person's numbers, right? Because like I don't know the source. Other people know the sources better than I do. But last time I checked somebody else, I think the number was like roughly in order of like $1.2 trillion of debt between like I think it's the 7 major companies involved in AI, right? And the amount of money that they're making is in order of 50 billion. And I hope that everybody watching this, if they don't understand the mathematical difference in terms of scale between billion and trillion versus thousand and million and billion, it's like go take the time to actually conceptualize it that, because it's like if you think going from thousandaire to millionaire isn't that far, it's like, and then you realize that going from millionaire to billionaire is like way further. And then I want you to think about like conceptually, how much further is it to go from 50 billion to 1.2 trillion? There's a numbers game going on here for how much AI really costs versus how much money it's currently making. And there's a second thing that's going on, which is that generally speaking, from the research that we have, the more people become informed on what AI is in every single facet of how it works, basically, right? We're not talking in one particular way. It's like basically the more people understand about AI, big picture, in all the different ways you can understand AI, big picture, the less they want to use it, crazily enough. And I have no idea what this person's affiliations are with any potential external people. So there is no chance that I can possibly suggest anything like that does exist in any way, which again, I hope it does not. But it would be foolish to presume that there are not people out there being paid to talk about how good AI is. And with how foolish what is being said is here, that's another option that is worth considering. That not only is this person not just like speaking from a position of like severe ignorance as somebody who is somehow a professor at a university, but they're doing so actually not from a position of ignorance, but from a position of like intent as a result of some potential transaction, right? That is a possibility. So, yeah. There's a fun idea. Go smash your brain into difficult things. You need to. You need to develop critical thinking, and then once you have developed, hold on to it, because AI erodes it. We know that. You need to keep developing it further. And if you want to be a slave, then go be a slave. But if you want agency, unfortunately that comes with understanding. Because you can't have agency over things you don't understand. You can't make decisions when you don't understand what the decision is that you're making. There's a reason why medical practitioners care massively about what is called informed consent. And that there is such a big difference between informed consent and uninformed consent when it comes to medical practice, because you have people who are incredibly expertise in a very specific field trying to communicate that to somebody who is not. Well, there's a reason we set up medicine to give you informed consent. That is a requirement of the job. You can't have informed consent if you lack the ability to be informed. Then all that there is to potentially give or not give uninformed consent. Your mind is your sharpest tool. That is my late night crash out. Thanks for listening.